Good afternoon, everyone. I am here today to discuss briefly with you the role that the government plays in your everyday life. Understanding how the government operates is critical to understanding your rights as a citizen. There are essentially three branches of government, and each of those three branches operate for a different reason within our government. Um, there's a few different reasons why it's important for you to understand the purpose of these particular branches. Um, Key among these reasons is there's no real way that you can understand your rights as a citizen if you don't have a basic understanding of the way that the government functions. So that would be the paramount of the reasons that one would want to understand the different branches of government and what they do. It ties hand in hand with your rights as citizens. Now, our founding fathers, when they formed the government, they set it up in a way as to prevent one branch of government from ever being too powerful. I found this of particular interest because I feel like the typical American citizen doesn't really have an understanding of the functions of the government. They are very quick to blame oversights on the president, and um, rather than realizing that there are other areas within the government that also function to decide how our society operates and what laws will be enforced. Now, it's important to understand that the three branches of government overlap. Before we get into how they overlap, let me first give you a brief overview of the three branches. The three branches are the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and also the executive branch. Now, if your rights are ever violated, you need to understand how to fix the situation after it occurs. Okay? Now, each of the three branches that function within our government serve a specific purpose. And the first of the branches that we'll discuss is the executive branch, which is comprised of the president and his cabinet. The second branch is the judicial branch, which is comprised of the courts of the nation. And lastly will be the legislative branch, which is comprised of Congress and also the Senate. Now, the most widely discussed branch of government is the executive branch for most citizens. We discuss the president more often than any other branch. Now, it is comprised of the president as well as the president's cabinet, which are both appointed by the president himself. It's important to understand that laws are not created by the president or his cabinet, okay? So if a law is passed that you don't agree with, rather than not voting for that president, understand that that's not who creates laws, okay? The president does not have the authority to create laws or to oversee laws that have previously been created. Now, one important set of authorities that the president does have is the authority to sign treaties with other nations, and also he has control over the U.S. military. The second branch is the judicial branch. Now, this is the branch that is comprised of the courts within our nation. There are federal courts and also state courts. Federal courts, which we'll focus more specifically on, have jurisdiction over federal laws. Now, within the federal courts lies the appeals courts, and this is where it becomes important to understand the distinction. Appeals courts actually have the authority to reverse decisions of lower courts. So, if you were accused of a crime or a family member of yours was accused of a crime that they didn't commit, this is when your understanding of the function of the government becomes important. You need to understand where you would go for recourse, and that would be the judicial branch, the appellate courts. Okay, the most visible of these courts is the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court ensures that the Constitution is followed. Okay, and this is by all courts, state courts, and federal courts. Their primary function is to enforce the Constitution. The judiciary does not create laws. Understand that. They simply interpret the laws, okay? And they enforce those laws. The final branch is actually the legislative branch, and this is where laws are actually created. The legislative branch is composed of the Senate and also Congress. Now, these are elected individuals who you and I elect, on a regular basis. You and I decide who sit in these positions. So understand when you vote what exactly you're voting for. You're voting for the person who will create laws that you will follow. Okay, the laws can be changed based on the votes of Congress and also the Senate. And the way that the founding fathers set up a check and balances system is that the legislature is checked by the executive branch, and so that the laws can be vetoed by the president. The judicial branch is also overseen by the legislative branch, and so forth. So it's a checks and balances system that functions so that not one particular branch of government can become too powerful. The president is also checked by the Supreme Court so that if he creates an action, in fact, you will see several laws that have come up within the Supreme Court that have been overturned by the Supreme Court's decisions. You also will see lawsuits sometimes that are specific to a particular citizen versus the United States or versus the president for an action that he created. Now, the president, of course, won't be in prison because of this, but that can be overturned by the Supreme Court. So understand that why they function and the checks and balances system that was created by our founding fathers, so that the president can never become a tyrant or the judiciary can never pass tyrannical laws. That is the reason that the system is set up the way it is. I hope you now have a brief understanding of how our nation's courts function. Also, I hope you have an understanding of the different branches of government that operate within our national government to create the society that we live in, why they're important, and also understanding that if your rights are infringed upon, I hope now you have a better understanding of what rights you have and where you should look in order to have those rights enforced. Thank you very much.